What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I am back with a video. This time once again, we're looking to the best playoff runs ever by a young superstar in NBA history, that being LeBron in 07 and Luka this year in 2022. And when trying to decide who had the better overall playoff run, I'm looking at 5 different things. Number 1, who had the better individual run. Number 2, who had the greater overall accomplishments. Number 3, who faced tougher competition. Number 4, who had more teammate help. And number 5, who had more iconic moments or historic games. Now, with that criteria finally laid out, let's look at our first playoff run from LeBron James back in 2007. Now, like I said before at this point, LeBron, he was only 22 years old and on a mediocre Cavaliers team. And coming into the playoffs, absolutely nobody expected Cleveland to make the NBA Finals. But due to LeBron's great play, averaging 25, 8, and 8 on 42% shooting, his Cavaliers team would go on a magical run and make the NBA Finals. And I do want to note one thing, LeBron during this run was top 5 in points, rebounds, assists, as well as steals at only 22 years old. And compared to his Cavaliers team, he was their leader in points, assists, as well as steals, and second in total rebounds. And speaking of that Cavaliers team, they were anything but great. You had Big Z averaging 12.6 points per game, Drew Gooden and Larry Hughes adding in 11, and Sasa Pavlovic adding in 9.2. There was no All-NBA teammates, no All-Star teammates, and LeBron James was a one-man wrecking crew with a cast of role players. And looking at the Cavaliers competition, I wouldn't say it was a super hard conference, but it definitely wasn't as bad as some make it out. As in the first round, they played the 41-41 Wizards, played Gilbert Arenas. The second round, the 41-41 Nets, played Vince Carter and Jason Kidd. And the conference finals, the Pistons, who still had Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, as well as Tayshaun Prince. The one big piece they didn't have was Ben Wallace, one of the best defenders in the game. And of course, in the NBA Finals, they played the Dynasty Spurs with Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, as well as Tony Parker. And when you add up those 4 teams, their overall win percentage comes out to 58.8%. Once again, not all-time difficult, but still very tough and a very hard road for an undermanned Cavs team with only LeBron James. And looking at the Eastern Conference Finals, the Pistons team LeBron James did beat, they were underdogs in that series, with Detroit having championship experience and only 2 years prior making the NBA Finals and nearly winning it. And looking at 07, they were still definitely very impressive, being second in opponents' points per game, 6th in net rating, 6th in offensive rating, and 7th in defensive rating. And for the majority of this series, LeBron, he went off and he was dominant. And after going down 0-2, he went nuclear, averaging 31.3 points per game, 9.8 boards, 8.8 assists on 49% shooting. And the one game everyone always looks to is Game 5 in Detroit, where LeBron exploded for 48 points. In the fourth quarter, scoring 25 straight, and for the last 16 minutes, having 29 out of his team's 30 points. And the cherry on top for this game, in double OT on the road, a 22-year-old LeBron had the game-winning layup. That 48-point special is still one of the best LeBron games of all time. And looking to the next round versus San Antonio, that Spurs team was definitely stacked, being first in SRS, first in net rating, second in defensive rating, and 5th in offensive rating. And at this point, Tim Duncan, he was at the peak of his powers, Manu was coming into his own, and Tony Parker was peaking as one of the best guards in the game. And if you wanted to find one flaw or one big critique in LeBron's 07 run, it was these NBA Finals. As in total, he only averaged 22, 7, and 7 on 36% shooting. Of course, he was going solo, but for LeBron James, it was far from his best ever series. And if you actually watch the film, he was getting double, triple teamed, he was getting box and ones, he was getting zones, he was getting every single look you could imagine from one of the best coaches of all time. And even with that bittersweet ending, this run for LeBron was still highly impressive and a big W for his Cavaliers team. as once again, they were not supposed to make the NBA Finals. And for LeBron individually in this run, he broke some big time records, becoming one of only 5 players ever to average 25, 8, and 8 in the playoffs, being under age 23. Also looking at players 23 and under in the playoffs, he had the most assists in the playoff run, the 8th most points, and the 9th most rebounds. And to add some very important context, when looking at the 07 playoffs, in total the teams only averaged 94.2 points per game, compared to 2022, where the team's average is 106.6. The same thing goes for field goals, 3-pointer attempts, as well as defensive rating. All those stats are much higher compared to the 07 playoffs. Once again, making it that more impressive for LeBron at age 22 to average 25, 8, and 8 and carry his team to the NBA Finals. Now, looking past LeBron James, next up, we have Luka Doncic in 2022, where he led his Mavericks team all the way to the conference finals for the first time in over a decade. And in this run, Luka averaged 32, 10, and 6 with 2 steals on 46, 36, and 77 splits. And one thing you do have to note, in every single playoff round, he led his team in points, rebounds, as well as assists, and compared to the entire NBA, he was first in points, third in assists, third rebounds, and second in steals. From an all-around perspective offensively, Luka in this run was doing everything and carrying his Mavs team as hard as he could. And looking at his Mavs team's competition in the first round, they put the 49-win Jazz, who had Mitchell, Gobert, and Bogdanovic. The second round, the 64-win Suns, who had the best record in the NBA, that featured Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, as well as Devin Booker. And the Western Conference Finals, the Dynasty Warriors, with Steph Curry, Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, Klay Thompson, as well as Draymond Green. In total for this run, his opponents had a win percentage just above 67. Compare that to LeBron's competition, and Luka clears him by just under 9%. And of course for Luka individually, the biggest series of his career was versus Phoenix, who once again had the best record in the NBA, being first in net rating, second in SRS, third defensive rating, and fourth in offensive rating. This Suns team right here was the heavy odds-on favorites to make the finals as well as win it. And very similar to LeBron James versus the Pistons, Luka's team in this series went down 0-2. But just like LeBron, in games 3 through 7, Luka Doncic would be simply spectacular, averaging 30, 10, and 7 with 3 steals on 45% shooting. And his Mavs team during that stretch won 4 out of the 5 games versus the heavy favored Suns. And of course the game everyone looks at is Game 7 in Phoenix, where Luka in total had 35 points and the Mavs won by 33. But if you go more in depth, it was even worse than that beatdown, as in the first half Luka by himself had 27, equaling the Suns team, who also had 27. And if you want to add even more insult to injury, looking at the Suns' big 3, that being Chris Paul, Booker, and Ayton, Luka Doncic single-handedly outscored them in this Game 7. And looking at the conference finals, the Warriors team he'd play was also all-time great, being first in defensive rating, third in opponents' points per game, fourth in SRS, and fifth in net rating. And once again, top to bottom, they had championship experience, as well as lockdown defense with Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green. Now, even with that being said, Luka individually had his way in this series, averaging roughly 33 points, 10 boards, 7 assists, 2 steals, 1 block on 43% shooting. He had multiple 40-point games and not once scored under 20. But once again, very similar to LeBron James, Luka in this series couldn't do everything. In his supporting cast, while they were very good, they weren't all-time great. For the entire playoff run, you had Jalen Brunson averaging 22, Dinwiddie averaging 14, Finney-Smith averaging 12, and Bullock also averaging 12. This Dallas team, quite literally, they were an anomaly and one of the weirder teams to make the conference finals. As looking at those players, they really don't have any big man presence. It's Luka and Brunson ball handling with a bunch of shooters, and Dinwiddie heat checking off the bench. Not the ideal recipe for winning a championship, but once again Luka, he was so great, and he carried this Dallas team as far as he could. And looking at NBA history, for players under the age of 23, Luka Doncic had the 3rd highest scoring average, the 8th highest assist average, and the 3rd highest steals average. Looking at both Luka and LeBron's runs, the stats, the overall context, the teams they played, for players in their 4th seasons, it was unprecedented and all-time great. But for the big-time question, who was better and who was greater in their playoff performances? And looking at our first category, we have the best individual playoff run. For this category, it's very difficult, but I think Luka Doncic top to bottom was the better player in this run. He was more poised, and he was better in the big-time moments. Once again, LeBron James, he had some great performances, but in the NBA Finals, he was exposed, and he was really beat down by a dominant Spurs team. Compared to Luka, who in all 3 series was never really phased, and his overall game never suffered and never fell off a cliff like LeBron James. Now looking at category number 2, we have the greater overall accomplishment. For this category, it has to be LeBron James when his run actually made the NBA Finals. And I think for this one category, it should be pretty unanimous, as once again making the finals at 23 is a very rare feat. You have guys like Kareem and Hakeem who made it very young, but in the modern era post-2000, it very rarely, if ever, happens. Now looking at category number 3, we have overall competition. Now looking at LeBron's run, I would say he faced 2 really good teams compared to Luka, who faced 2 really dominant teams, that being Phoenix and Golden State, and 1 mediocre team, that being Utah. When looking at LeBron's run in the first 2 rounds, his 2 opponents weren't even above 500, that being the Wizards as well as the Nets. Looking at overall competition, that brings it down a notch in my mind compared to Luka Doncic. And one thing I do want to point out, that Phoenix team once again had the best record in the NBA, winning 64 games. And this Golden State team, they're on a mission and can very easily win the championship, beating Boston or Miami. Now looking ahead to category number 4, we have teammate help. Now for this category, both guys had mediocre supporting cast, but I would say Luka had more offensive help compared to LeBron James. As for Luka's run, he had Jalen Brunson who could get you 20 or even 30 points on a given night. And his shooters like Finney-Smith, Kleber, Bullock, they're definitely pretty reliable and knock down snipers from the corners. Looking at LeBron's team outside himself, there was no primary ball handler, no second option on offense, and really everything went through LeBron James, the sole creator, as well as the sole scorer. Looking at someone like Big Z, his offensive game was reliant on LeBron James. That goes for Larry Hughes, Pavlovich, anyone on that Cavs roster. I will say in Luka's defense, that Cavaliers team had a top 5 defense, but looking at the offensive help, Luka Doncic had way more compared to the 07 Cavaliers. Now looking at the final category, we have the more iconic or historic moments. Of course, Luka had a great Game 7, scoring 35 points, outplaying Phoenix's starters, and versus Golden State had some pretty dominant games. But when looking at LeBron's run, compared to Luka Doncic, he had the better peak and the better overall best game. That being Game 5 in Detroit, where he scored 48 points, adding in the game winner and carrying his Cavaliers team on his back. That game for LeBron James, looking at the first stint in Cleveland, was the one game you look to as an iconic moment and an all-time great historic performance. And if you were keeping count in this video, looking at all 5 categories, when it's all said and done, LeBron James in 07 beats Luka Doncic 3-2. That's my final verdict, and I think 07 LeBron still had the better and overall greater playoff run compared to Luka in 2022. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Who do you think had the better playoff run? And do you think Luka in his 4th season was better than LeBron in his 4th? As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time.